Good afternoon. This special council meeting for the capital 2026 budget discussion with the Township of Selwyn on Friday, November 21st, 2025 will come to order. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga and Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. Please observe a moment of silence so the council staff and members of the public can quietly reflect on our duty to the community that we are trying to serve. Thank you. Members of the public, staff, presenters, and members of council, please be advised that meetings are broadcast and recorded and made available on the internet. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest of the general nature thereof? Seeing none, please note that in the minutes. Were there any questions posed from the public, Madam Clerk?
No questions.
Thank you very much. We will proceed to have our manager financial services and our treasurer, Lane Vance, share with us the 2026 capital budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just making sure that my clicker is still working. It doesn't look like. Okay, I'll wait on that. As I introduce the topic, the reports before council under 4A, the draft capital budget. Budget's early documents, just a bit of an overview of the budget document that we're going through. Notes a few things on page 2, which I think are important, and I'll still mention as we go through with respect to equipment and few different challenges that we're experiencing there. And when we do get to the very end.
Be here, Lane.
Okay. That's good. Yeah, so when we get to the report recommendation at the very end, there's some additional comments there with respect to sole sourcing and different things like that. So I'll make sure that there's time at the very end to go through and I can answer any of those questions. And I think you'll see that it will emerge as we go through our presentation as to why we want to move ahead on some of these things sooner than later, and market conditions the way that they are for some of these different things. Is it? We're good?
Yeah.
So we'll work through the budget cycle that we're on now. This a familiar kind of a page for council. We updated it obviously for this year's dates, and we're early on in the process. Staff now are working on other aspects of the budget process. We'll be dealing with operations budgets that are coming up in December, and the impacts of today's meeting on those operations budgets. We'll get together in December to talk about impacts and outline our departmental work plans and how that's going to change. As you'll see in this slide, we're essentially starting for budget presentations today. Started back in August, September for some of the managers, and we'll go right through into February when we actually are looking at the formal adoption of the PSAT budget. Okay, it's frozen there a little bit. Yeah. No. There we go. Yeah. So I'd like to draw attention just for council to that summary worksheet. It's a nice one pager. Everything's all on some that for me it was on 11 by 17 paper and I could still barely read it, but it's a nice one pager, an overview of the capital program as proposed. It shows the for taxation budget, it's in around $5 million this year, so it's a very aggressive capital program. It includes some studies with specific to the zoning bylaw, which I think we brought up at the last council meeting. So we included a placeholder there for that. We would still need to go through RFP process bring that back before council. And there are some placeholder amounts here which are typical in there in terms of land, asset management, things like that. And at the very bottom of that report, there's also some pending projects that we are not quite sure of yet because we have them out for application for the different funding authority. So we're hopeful that they will come to fruition as well. And some of them are $100 and some they're outlined in the capital program as to how they would be funded. But just before we dive in, I want to make the point that it's a bit of a different meeting for us because we are bringing water and sewer to the same meeting. Not something we typically do, and this reflects the fact now that this is now within Adam's department, and we're responsible for it, no longer at the US. And it definitely goes hand in hand in that many of our projects include water and sewer in the Lakefield ward in particular. George Street's a big one, and we'll talk about that as we go through. And so we want to bring the water and sewer capital investments to the meeting today, but we are very intentional in terms of separating because it's clear that not our entire municipality has water and sewer services. So we're treating it differently. It's treated as Code B on our report. There are times where it makes sense to talk about it, but it's very clear that part A that we're talking about now is funded through taxation, through reserves, through grants, things like that. And then part B, when we talk about water and sewer, that's water and sewer reserves, water and sewer rates, grants, things like that. So we've been very intentional about that. We do separate them, but it's just obvious that when Adam looks at a project, he's going to have to look at all the components of that project and how it's going to flow. So funding in that instance is very, very different in terms of how it's taking place. Second point is that really the budget moves forward on what I would call projects of record, things that we've talked about here in council chambers or on work plans or on replacement schedules and things like that. We talked about them before, and they're often embedded within some of our longer term plans that we're taking a look at. And so the goal ideally is maybe to talk about projects today in a little bit more detail, talk about how they're funded, what's affecting them and things like that. But there shouldn't be any real surprises for council today because these are essentially embedded in some type of approved plan or study. And the third point is really that we try to maximize outside funding as much as possible. So throughout this whole project that we've been looking at, working with Angie's team and Megan's putting together grant applications, always maximize that outside funding source as much as we can, which saves our reserves, saves taxation, and allows us to do other things with the operating. I alluded a little bit just to the equipment, and we are going to touch on this when we get to the various departments, but I would say the biggest challenge for us at this point with the long-term forecast for council for capital is still equipment. We kind of came to grips with it last year with fire, but there's some other issues that have come forward there. And Public Works is making tremendous progress with respect to studying that, taking a look at the equipment and different things, but we still have a little bit more work to do there. And we need to report back on council. Like found when we were going through, looking back on some of the last reports and things like that, some of the pledges that we made to council, we've got to get a fairly robust report back to council before we budget. So with that kind of grounding, and then also with the comment about the big capital sheet that has the big summary, we'll just work through that in order. And we'll start off with general government. We will at the next council meeting have an opportunity to talk about some general government investments in closed session as well. So I think it would be fair to say that the investments in furniture and technology are what we call typical. They're on schedules. We have some different stuff that would be either starting or have totally worn out equipment and things like that. So we're working to furniture replacement, not a lot of money there, but something. We are proposing a small increase in the contribution of reserves for technology that isn't affecting this budget, but will affect the operations budget. Just realize that over our investment cycle, we need to make some marginal increases over the next little while. It's not surprising given the library budget and how large the technology component of the library is, but their technology budget is far and away higher than what the municipalities budget is. So we need to take some steps forward, move forward. There are a number of capital investments with respect to our voice over internet protocol process that we put in with our phone system. We think we can still make some more savings there operationally. We connect some of our offsite locations to VoIP. Jonathan and Dustin will be taking a look at that as we work through. Despite all of those comments, security remains at the core of all of our IT efforts. Which, as I mentioned, we'll be discussing for this section, and just wanted to give council that public assurance that we take, despite all the new things that come along and the shiny new IT thing, security remains number one for us. And I just can't remember if I'd found that around before, but questions are whenever council feels comfortable. So as we work through at the end, however, we move on to our municipal facilities, and that's Department 6. So the first couple of ones that are up on the slide here, at this parking lot at 1310 Center Line, it's a bit of a carryover project, but a planned carryover, and we did a small expansion of that, and guidance guys we're hoping maybe 6 or 8 parking spots, maybe if not that parking. But included in the 2026 budget is completion of that project, some asphalt work there, and then a general refresh in the appearance using microsurfacing and line painting. So we're hoping that will just provide some additional space here for meetings. At some points, the parking lots are pretty much maxed out, so hopefully that will allow us some flexibility, and that's all using our own forces and then outside contractors for the microsurface. The other significant project in this facilities is that the Innismore Arena floor. And that you saw that was a topic of in the recommendation in the report. Significant project for 2026. It doesn't happen very often. We did it over in Lakefield a number of years ago. Innismore, they did a bit of a significant refresh of the facility. And at that time, the floor was in good shape. But we have noticed some concerns. 2025 council had approved the design. That's now complete. And we will be moving to some sort of tendering or RFP process. As noted on the capital worksheet and in the report my report recommendation, staff are proposing to use the recommendations from our sole source engineer. And sole source, the general contractor, Synco, who provides most of our ice plant material and equipment. And then they would utilize subcontractors for other components of that program. I think it's fair to say that it's going to be a challenge for Mike and his team over there. Timing is going to be the key. Given the fact that it's a seasonal operation. We've got a limited time from when the ice goes out until the ice is expected to go back in. A lot of planning, a lot of revisions to the plan, and kind of making decisions on the fly. I think next year Lakefield is going to release the first one with ice in next year. It provides a little flexibility, but that was part of the plan. All along. I put a note on this slide just on financing options, and so we'll be considering those financing options and bringing that back to council at some point. I'm not really sure at this point whether Infrastructure Ontario is going to be the best way to go. We typically would look at that over a very limited time. When we did the Lakefield floor, I think it was over 4 years. But we actually had used pump dollar to repay that, so it wasn't taxed out of the rates or anything like that. And we were able to get a very favorable rate at that time, and we paid it back for 4 years, and then we gone. So we might look at something like that. The other is we'll take a look at our internal resources, how cash flows are going, what's the status of our AR for taxation and arrears and things like that, and is there an option for internal financing and essentially pay ourselves instead of going somebody else.
Question from Deputy Mayor Blunt.
Thank you, through your worship. The questions, carryovers have been mentioned in several different projects, and do we have an idea what percentage of the capital projects are carryovers or multi-year? I know that it's always challenging. Things get pushed. Some of these are pushed, projects, some of them aren't. They were scheduled to be done. Um, any idea what percentage of that is? I just, and the reason I bring it up is we've had this conversation at county as well, biting off more than we can chew each year and finding ourselves, with extra projects to finish each year, and then the new projects don't get done, because it kind of gets kicked down the can down the road. So any idea like how you look at that in the budget?
Yeah, so that's a great question. A number of years ago, I think it was the mayor actually that brought that up in terms of carryover, and we would say this is current year, or this is multi-year, how is it? We did add on the large sheet, we added the project status column, so it's
Yeah.
the third column top. I don't have the percentage, but I could definitely take that spreadsheet, run it through some calculations and do that. What I'm trying to do with that column is to give council a flavor of what we are. See, the current year, it's already planned, it's on the replacement. I just don't know that percentage, but I
Yeah.
can definitely do that. That wouldn't take me very long on that sheet. Just add a small column, just kind of take a look at it, or just to report out on.
Classify them.
Yep.
As a follow-up. Yeah, no, I think it just helps to avoid setting expectations. You know what happens when with the public, that doesn't happen. It's supposed to be done this year and it ends up having to get pushed because we have other priorities. So thanks for that. Second question to do with the Innismore, the floor. The RFP includes all of the project management, or is Mike involved in some kind of supervisory capacity, or is it strictly project managed from the RFP?
Yeah, so Mike, I'll get Mike to weigh in on that for sure, but so we're using TS Engineering right now. It was sole source last year to put together specifications.
Yeah.
They'd be the lead that would take the lead on any of the specs and all that type of stuff, and involved throughout the whole project. But I think Mike and his team are gonna be involved, because I know when we did Lakefield, there's always those questions that come up. And you're sitting around the table, you've got your lead contractor,
Yeah.
your consultant, and then they say, what do we do there? So all that Mike maybe answer that, but I think our staff are gonna be intimately involved in it.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we will be at the table. So contracted in through TS Engineering as Lane mentioned. So they'll be looking after the administrative and meeting notes and whatnot. Simco, who are a canoe partner, would take the more operational side of it, the construction, and then they will get best quotes from concrete people. From the board system is something that we have to use, sports systems, because that's what we have. We were scrapping everything then, but we could go to there's 2 or 3 board companies you could go to, but because we're going to be reusing most of the board pieces, we have to stay with them. And Simco, this is something they've done in Peterborough. It's something that they've done at other sites. So I will be our lead at the table and there at all times, and so attend all the meetings, making sure that stuff still has to get signed off for and whatnot, but by working with Simco, time and them being able to very tightly control, making sure that it's one of the top concrete companies, because it's not something that everybody does. And even in Peterborough, when they've done 4 in the last few years, they were the Memorial one is the one that they're not very happy with, and they're still having troubles with it.
Oh, wow.
The second you that starts, it's nothing but hassle. So there's some pre-approved, but there's still going to be a fair bidding process for that. So we're getting our best bang for a buck, and by them being a member of the canoe, again, it's guaranteed best pricing.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks for that question. And yeah, I think the other point I just want to make about are we biting off more than we can chew? And that's definitely something that Janice and I chat about with the managers as we go through, because there's no end of projects for us to share. The ice storm last year did have an impact on our progress this year. But I will say that all the departments responded amazingly and tried to get back on track with that. There were some projects that we on purpose just said, you know what, that isn't my a live or die project. We're gonna put that one off. We're gonna fail it. Definitely contracted as much of the tree removal and road allowances and properties that we could and bring that over to professionals, but it did have an impact last year for sure. But no, looking at the list here and after you asked that question, big dollar items, floor is one and it has to happen within the year. Two, George Street, and same thing, it's, you look at that as the water and sewer project and that's where the majority of the expenses are, but the other components of that, which are in there, fairly significant. So yeah, when I look at the projects that are on there, equipment purchases, that is one of those challenges, like I mentioned when we get there. But I don't think it is too aggressive. I think we can accomplish it. Just people who want from the floor project, it will come back in operations revenue as well, because obviously we don't have use of the main part of the floor. So all the floor rentals, activities that might have planned on that lower level. And then it just kind of depends, can we bring some of those activities up to the second floor in the auditorium? Can we do that or not? And then, of course, it will impact other operational things like the Shamrock Festival. So those type of things as well. So we'll have an impact on operations revenue and just haven't figured out how we're gonna deal with that because it's an aspect of the capital program, but it is taking away from operations. So we'll have some good robust conversations with that before we come up. So just carrying on in Department 6, the facility assessment review or the architect Odd, Ron Odd, we call it Odd report. We're looking at a number of different projects this year, and our project bundles are energy and equipment and health and safety. Also, first, I think came up in the spring last year, but the roof at the Ennismore Brewing Club needs to be replaced as well. That's very common in that report. We have did some repairs on the flat roof before. We re-screwed the bottom part of that roof before and put in better washers on the fasteners. But we're at a point now where we need to make some improvements on that roof. So that's definitely a problem project. Making some investments in emergency management and that's following along on some recommendation, some input that Brian and Nancy have put in, and then also recommendations coming out of the ISLIM. And so we're definitely setting up for a second EOC within the township. So that's something that we didn't have before. And also another switch for a portable generator. So those type of investments will just serve us well down the road as we go. Pretty much all of those investments are going through a pump fund, so the unconditional grant fund. So we're not actually pulling out of reserves. The one-time investments that fit in well with how we use the AMP funds. Make those investments, they'll be there for years to come and then we move on. Some additional detail, I think, on the report. From the perspective of where we were this year, I think that by the end of November, we'll be through most of the odd report recommendations. This building has already had all its full talking. We're actually sealed up now. What was before, I chatted with Jerry today. They're moving on to other locations. I think they're up to Bridgemont Library for a couple of days. So lots of small windows for the Bridgemont Library. So lots of talking. That I think is all proceeding. So that's Department 6. Obviously, it's the arena about roughly $2 million, and then start looking at these other expenditures in around 300, 350. It's a large amount of investment on department, but as I mentioned, I think it's all achievable with everything we've discussed with the managers at this point. In Department 7, Economic Development or Community Development. uh, The Youngs Point sign, it is a carryover for sure. There's been a lot of back and forth with MTO. And I don't really want to let Nancy speak for how many meetings she's had with the MTO or the different things. So we'll move on from that, but I think we have a so we have a solution. We do have a permit, and so we're moving forward with the Youngs Point sign. The report to council last year on two village entrance signs in Litchfield. So there was one down on Water Street and then one up on Queen. So we definitely had some volunteer involvement as well as dealing with the local contractor on the Water Street project. So that's essentially completed at this point in time. But we didn't have enough funding and involvement with the community to finish the second one. So that's in this year's budget for 2026.
Question from Councillor Henry.
Thank you through you, Mayor Salas. So just, yes, back on the Youngs Point side, we do have a permit after 10 years. We're moving forward on this now.
I'll let Angie speak to that.
Yes, we do have a permit. And I want to thank Megan and Bryden as well. Bryden got us to the finish line with it. Megan's been persistent as well. And now we just need the contractor to install it. So with any luck, this actually, we can take it off. But if not, it'll be in the spring.
Wonderful news. Just to follow up then. So just curious, it has been a 10-year process or actually possibly longer because the drawings came in 2016. Oh, Youngs Point, and we had to figure out how you spell Youngs Point. I'm just curious, how much would the price have increased from 10 years ago to get this sign? I'm just trying to understand, not to be too cynical as my negative side can be, but this is bureaucracy 10 years and how much have we spent over the 10 years getting this done?
Okay, through you, actually, the original spec on the sign, it was over specified. So we were actually able to work with Sean Milne and he came up with a solution that actually ended up reducing the actual cost of the signage. So believe it or not, it's less expensive than what we originally quoted for. So maybe it was a good thing.
Sometimes pays to wait.
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, through Mayor. Just wanted to drop back to Department 6 for a second with respect to the transfer switch for the Bridge North Community Hall, the $74,000. Does that include the actual generator? It says for a portable generator. That sounds like a lot of money for a transfer switch.
Yeah, I can let Bryden speak to that. I think that's just for the hook.
Through you, Mayor. So that is just for the transfer switch. The township already owns two portable, I believe they're 80 kilowatt generators. We'd use one of those to power it. The challenge when we had the contractor do the assessment of that facility is how the facility was built in two stages and how the electrical room was already constructed and laid out. The Electrical Safety Authority came in to assess the site and to give us a recommendation. And the only way we could put a transfer switch in there is actually at the service from the road. So it's substantially more than if we were actually going to put in the electrical room. And it's just, we're out of space within the actual facility.
Yeah, that sounds very expensive for just the transfer switch alone. When I initially read it, I thought it included the generator, but I read it the second time, no. So thank you.
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify, it's the transfer switch and the enclosure or housing around it as well. So it's
Right.
not just the switch specifically, there's a shed around it as well.
Okay, thank you.
And just before we move on from Department 7, the last item is the Special Events Loan Bank. That would include also some storage and then spots for it to go. And this is in support of the community. And that's where community development comes in as opposed to just economic development. So things like bollards, portable bollards, barricades, signage, pylons, different things like that. So Andy's looking for crew to kind of put in place a program so that we have sign in, sign out, that type of thing, but that all figured it. But it would support our community groups that have events going. Over to fire department. So a lot of equipment, miscellaneous equipment, PPE, and this year's replacement schedule. In preparation for the budget and spend a lot of time reviewing schedule in detail. showing the expenses of the, last year, you'll remember the fire department moved forward with a recommendation to council and a stock pumper purchase, so that was a different approach rather than specifying everything. We got the stock pumper, made some minor modifications to some of our additions. And because those units were in stock, the main thing was that we didn't have to put the order in and then wait for 16 months, 18 months. It was received in the same year. And it also yielded some substantial savings as well. I chatted with the fire department at the time, and we more or less come to the agreement that we'd like to see, 2 or 3 of these units in place, make sure that they were going to work for the fire department, and then we do a bit of a revamp of the placements. But in our discussions this year, and I should just say to you that in that plan, mid-year, count for mid-term plan after the 5 years, council will see that we went into the negative briefly. So that's still an issue that needs to be resolved, and whether that's a brief injection of pump funds or I would like to think as a treasurer, we may have some savings that might just get it close. But we'll see where that goes. But so there's still some left to be the guide. But in this year's discussions, the NFPA replacement and the recommendations from the NFPA came up. And more importantly, the move or the acceptance within the industry that fire apparatus should be a 20-year replacement as opposed to a 25-year replacement. So it's, I guess from my perspective, it's on a 10-year replacement schedule. It's quite easy to just replace a piece of equipment and then say, this is going to be replaced in 20 years. It's hopefully 25, because when we replace it, it's not even on cheap, whatever. But it fundamentally changes how we look at equipment, how we take a piece of equipment that's nearing the end of its useful life or not quite completed and move it to another fall and those types of things. So Gord and Ted, Howie spent a lot of time in the replace a piece of equipment, then looking at the other equipment and shuttling it around to different locations and different spots where maybe there's going to be as much activity. And what that does is really maximize the food. But in so doing, and with this MFP recommendation, if we were to just carte blanche say, okay, it's going to be 20 years and we're going to move it out now, we're back behind 8 ball. And we're going to go do some work on it. The other factor which is coming along here are some engine emission changes that we've been advised of in 2027, I think, 2028. So, and the concern there being that, not only do these emission changes maybe change how what we think about the equipment, but also some pricing increases that would come along with that. In looking at all the reports that we have, it's easy to focus on the fire service. It's then easier for me to look a little bit broader at all of our departments, but then we start to look at other plans. So we look at our sustainability plan and things like that. We need to make sure that we're not making a decision on let's purchase this truck before the emissions change. Because if the emissions change is a good thing for the environment, then that's what we should do. That's what we have a sustainability plan in place for a reason. At the same time, I think it's the unknown. It's just that it doesn't take too much to think of trucks that are sitting at the side of the road for half an hour and going through a regen process and just sitting there idling at high speeds and burning out and things like that. Try to figure out, okay, how does that work in their operations? And how would that happen if it's a fire truck? So I definitely don't want to downplay the emissions change or the issue of replacing. So, in response to that kind of back and forth and dialogue, I asked the department to do a little bit more research and get back to us with a bit of a database report on what townships are doing, how many have actually already moved to a 20-year replacement. I know Gordon and Howie were earlier this week and they asked some of those questions. And so I think that this is something that council could see again in December when we come back and do it again. If council takes a look at the replacement schedule, the next truck could be replaced given the funds that are on hand. It wouldn't take a change to the schedule. And we didn't really want to do that to council, given the fact that we just got this new schedule and had it in place 2025. The other comment too is that we are putting significant capital levy dollars in. There's a CPI increase to that. There's dollars that are going in there right now. And we're also just increasing the general allocation for the yearly contribution as well. So there's always some significant increases that are built into that. Before we even start looking at making the 25 to 20 year change. So all that to say, we have some additional details that Gordon, Howie, and Ted are going to provide. Sit down, take a look at that. Figure out how does the emission change mesh with our strategic plan goals and the sustainability plan. And then based on that information, consider, is there a change that's warranted and then we should recommend the council in December. That's kind of where we are.
Question.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. A couple of questions. Extrication equipment going to electric battery power. That's the newest thing. Is there any, I know the existing one coming near end of life. Is there any resale value on that? Are there smaller apartments that would buy that from us?
Right, gov deals and see what we can get for it.
On Gov deals, you do it, yeah.
There's lots of departments to the north that, they need equipment and they've got a budget, so.
Yeah.
It's quite a discussion, with a few chiefs from the north up there, and they're
That's great. Yeah.
yeah,
That's great.
small little, municipalities.
Mhm. Yeah, even working a deal with them off Gov, that might be helpful for them. The other question, the follow-up question is with respect to bunker gear again. We purchased some cleaning equipment last year or maybe the year before now.
Yeah, we
Washing equipment?
purchase 18 sets every year.
Yeah, so the washing,
Oh,
the local washing of them, does that, because I know the issue with the number of sets that you needed was because they all had to go out. With the washing, does the cycle shorten for you now and are you able to have fewer sets or really impacted that?
well, it's just under, on NFPA. It's
Yeah.
not a recommendation. It's a must. After 10 years, they've got to
Right.
replace. So the washing, I'm gonna say full-time, or you got a full-time department. Their bunker gear's on pretty well all the time.
Yeah.
So that's where more wear and tear comes out. And, again, in a city, they're probably busier than we are.
Yeah.
Where ours, some of it goes out in 10 years and looks like it's brand new.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah,
problem.
that's the problem, but it's just the age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, a good thing is with this next funding this year, or this coming year, we're putting in for more extractors.
Yeah.
So now, instead of sending it out as much as we do, unless it's a big call like.
Yeah.
Lakefield, so.
Yeah, everything goes out. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
it should save us a bit of money.
yeah,
In
great,
the long run, Ron. Yeah.
great, thank you, chief.
Let's move on then to, in Department 14, there's no purchases planned in 2026. We do have a replacement schedule in there and Robert is reviewing needs, probably more specifically for the bylaw enforcement vehicle. It's coming up for replacement, but also we will be taking a look at our 2 existing hybrids with respect to battery life and things like that. So we're starting to get a little bit more history on them and be able to take a look, is that, when's the best time to replace those as well with respect to the batteries. Are we using batteries to their fullest? Or on how many trips do they flip over and start using gas and hybrid, different things like that. So probably taking a look at that, but there's no purchases planned in 2026. On to roads from 20. So as I mentioned, George Street is a prominent project for us this year. It would include water, sewer, sidewalks, and stormwater. Sidewalks is the slide that we're talking about here, and using some of the sidewalk study that was done by Wills as part of the roads needs study, taking a look at that. So the one photo you can see that the bottom right is, you see a section of sidewalk that's heaved fairly badly because of the trees. as part of the design work, we take a look at that and say, maybe that sidewalk should actually switch to the other side of the road, away from the trees. There's an open ditch on the other side, and then be able to link down by the George Street pumping station to the trail. So those are some of the things we take a look at. I think Adam said that the design's, oh, it's not at 90% yet, but it's over 70%.
The amount of mayor, probably about 60% right now. Yeah.
So that's a process where we're working through. The majority, we would look at that as a water and sewer project. Because the water main and the sewer main they're gonna take the whole road when they actually carry on with the project. But we are funding it separately, so the different components are gonna be funded separately. On a project like that, where the whole road is taken because of the water and sewer main, then the water and sewer pays for the road. If it was a part, like a cut or a trench box, and we're only taking the lane of the road or something like that, we might divide that differently. It's just important on how we fund it. The other point on this project, I think, is significant long-term impact on the village, because this also ties in with the work that we did in Lakefield South. So when we did the Lakefield South tie-in from out at the main road through to Smith Street and then down Fraser, we ended at the corner of Fraser and George. So from George to the George Street pumping station is essentially undersized for what we need to do at Lakefield South. So this work will take it right to the George Street pumping station and really set us up on, well, from then, I'd say decades, but probably decades in terms of our Lakefield South development. So it's significant, not only in terms of the scope of the project and what is going to be accomplished this year, but also in terms of the long-term impact that it's going to have on the village and its growth. Just the last point there is that we will have development charges that will flow into this. It's set up to be funded the water and sewer component through reserves, and then this component through pump. And they're looking at possibly moving it from pump dollars over the OC money, which is the additional grant. But development charges will also come in to benefit this project. How we typically did that is we do the whole project, we get a film cost in, and then we take a look at the impact and identify that. And this is how much it's going to come from development charges. And then depending on the length of time it takes to recover those, we might put a schedule in place, but it's known that as DCs come in, we pay it back. So definitely multiple funding sources on it.
Councilor Blair.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Sennis. Yeah, I speak on behalf of many people in Lakefield who've spoken to me about the price of water and sewer and how much they pay. And I understand economies of scale and everything else, and that it is a user pay system, that we don't have and I know that we're going to be talking about it later, but the question that I want to ask is with the development charges, because this is another question that I've been asked. Are the development charges that you're talking about the development charges that will be coming from Lakefield South? Because a lot of this work is done in order to keep accommodating Lakefield South coming on board. So are they the development charges that we're going to be talking about?
Yes, you Madam Mayor, yeah. So there is kind of that combination of when you do an upgrade, you need to take a look at it. And that's where we rely on our engineers to say, well, oversight, for instance, would be very clearly Lakefield South development charges. There'd be a component there which is just replacement, and so we would look to the result, not the replacement of that. So it is a kind of a multi-part funding program, and it would be the Lakefield South development charge that would pay that back. And because of the fact that it's such a long-term investment, that's why I think in this instance it would be probably worth it to take a look at what are those costs, and then what could we expect to recoup from the development charge over time. So moving on, still in roads, but we have I guess maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I think, microsurfacing a number of our roads, and the first number of years we microsurfaced asphalt surfaces only, and recently we've been applying microsurface onto the township roads. So we've seen good success. This is a participation in the county tender. So microsurfacing, Adam can maybe go through it in a little bit more detail, but it's kind of a low cost preventative maintenance treatment that just caps the road and then helps to stop any deterioration of the tire and chip. You want to add anything to that? Basic, that's really what it does. It just kind of caps the road. And the little I do know about road reconstruction is you don't want water getting in your road base. Right? You want it to basically come up and then get out to your ditches and you get water in your road base and it starts to freeze thaw and that's what.
Question from Deputy Mayor Buck.
Thank you, through your worship. Probably through Adam. Is the equipment that does this complicated, or is it something that we seem to be doing a lot of it, and I think it's caught on through the rest of the county? Is the equipment complicated to use? Could we own or share equipment? Because we have lots of it, it seems like lots of places are doing it now. Is that something that could be purchased by municipalities or shared by municipalities to help reduce the cost?
Through you, Madam Mayor. I'm not to say it's not complicated, but it is definitely a specialized, like a niche market for it, right? It's just like asphalt. I mean, you have to be a fairly big municipality. Even the city of Peterborough, like they have a small asphalt spreader to do little patches, but they don't have a full asphalt crew to do entire roads.
Right.
So it'll be very similar here too with this micro surfacing. And most of the companies that do it, they're also the aggregate company. So they own the oil, the company that produces the oil and slurry mix, right? So we'd still be dealing with these companies to provide the oils and the aggregate mixes anyway. If we own the equipment and provided the manpower, I don't know that there would be a real big savings.
Yeah. This picture doesn't look that complicated. I think most farmers could operate that.
They just make it, they make it look easy.
Thank you.
And you have to be careful about lending it out. We might not ever get it back. Our roads are in a lot better shape than most of our adjoining townships.
Thank you very much. Just before I leave, just really what we're talking about here is extending the pavement surface or tar and chip surface just for another 4 to 8 years. We're trying to extend it as long as we can before it to get back into a full rebuild. Another project was Temple Tiny, and so this is an actual picture of how Temple Tiny should look today. In the last little while, our crews went in and actually did the road, reshaped it, dug out any of the bad spots, added new gravel and reshaped it. We had success letting it sit over the winter when we did the 6th line. And so it's Adam and Scott's recommendation. We're going to do the same thing for Temple Tiny. We'll let it sit for the winter, go back in, kind of regrade, and then we'll put a double surface on it in 2026. So that's one of those projects that I think we probably could have moved ahead. It was near the end of the year, and so the decision was just made, hey, let's do the same thing. Haven't walked on it lately, so check it out. This project in roads is Regent Street and design work there, and of course we always try to be a year or two or more ahead when it comes to grant applications, when it comes to planning things out and really taking a hard look at some of these roads. You can see on the slide that the area to be studied is not only the full length of Regent Street, but also Duff Street and Baptiste Lane as well. We have had some water main issues along Duff Street and down at that end of Regent. And then Baptiste is a fairly narrow street and a one-way street as well. And it would just make sense that that be done on this at the same time. There's a lot of factors to take into account on Regent Street. We did some preliminary work many years ago. I think they're using that as a base, but they're going to go back in and do some topographic surveys and different things as well. Probably the biggest thing for anybody that's been there is if you looked at Albert Street and how Albert Street cuts through the profile of that road, it's a bit low. When that was done, I do know that Wills was taking a look at future improvements of Regent Street, so that was already kind of taken into account back in those days. But if you're familiar with the road at all, it's used a lot by the commercial sector. It's used by folks that are visiting the commercial sector. A couple of significant institutional developments along that road, and we have an ongoing issue with the commercial establishments actually using the road lines. And not their own property. So there's a lot of factors that kind of come into play. So I would expect that there will be an opportunity with the construction of this magnitude for some public engagement. And council will be very much involved in there as well. The center part of the road and down by Duff Street's fairly significant drainage issues. It's fairly flat. So it's trying to take a look at all those factors and make sure that when we go in and we put the proper road base in, and then it's a matter of asphalt down the road, it's time to go rebuild. This would be totally designed, totally rebuilt from one end to the other, and we just put it in sections that we can afford on an annual basis. Did you want to?
Question. I have a question. When you're working on that road, there have been some problems in the past where trucks are using it and they're too high for the overhead wires. Is there any thought to having Hydro putting in higher poles or doing something, because the power's been off in sections of Lakefield where a truck has gone down the road and it's been too high and knocked the wires out?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think the specific area you're talking about, yeah, it was a bell or a Nexicom line that got hit and snapped the poles, and they kind of ended up tripping a couple switches. They have raised that line and they have put a guard on it now, like a shield, so that trucks do see it more visibly. But they're limited on how high they can go because of the hydro lines. There's 3-phase hydro that goes across the top of the poles. So they'd have to raise everything up in order to maintain, I'm not sure if it's a meter and a half clearance Telecom has to maintain from hydro. And then there's a requirement of buffer road as well. So, you know, when we do roads like this, what we are trying to do is engage Hydro and Enbridge and some of the other utilities as well. We did the same on Strickland. We told them we're doing the project. If there's any infrastructure upgrades they were looking at, when they were aware we did work on it. And at that time, you know, we did work on Strickland, so they didn't do anything. So we'll definitely be engaging other utilities as this is going to be a long project, so there'll be lots of consultation. So we'll definitely put it on the radar. And if there's any work they want to do and incorporate it as we're doing the road, and that would make sense at the same time.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Councilor Boyko.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sanis. A couple of questions with respect to the George Street and the Regent Street project, which takes in Duff and Baptiste Lane. One, with respect to George Street, do we have an estimate of the timing of when the work will begin and approximately when it will end for George Street?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we won't know exactly until it actually goes out for tender.
Yeah.
But I was expecting with George Street, it would be something they'd want to start first thing in the spring. But I would imagine it'd be a single year project, but it'd probably be late into the fall before they would complete it. It'd be a full construction season. It's a big project.
Spring to fall. Okay, thank you. And a follow-up. So could you tell me about the communication that will go to the people on George Street, letting them know that this will happen? Will there be direct communication to those people? And this leads to my next question, and why I've kept the George Street question to this is direct communication to the people in Regent, Duff and Baptiste, to let them know that there will be improvements coming. And I say that because there are people every year on Regent who complain to me, and no doubt to you, about Regent Street. And so will there be communication directly to the people on George Street? And will there be communication directly to the people on Regent, Duff and Baptiste about what is coming?
Through you, Madam Mayor, so two parts there. So George Street would be like any other construction project we do. We do have lots of communication with the residents. I imagine social media, Speak Up Selwyn will have a site on there. Once a contractor is selected, then typically we would do a joint letter. They would actually be directly either mailed or hand delivered to all the residents on there. They would have our contact information as well as whoever the site superintendent is, if they had any concerns. So yeah, that's similar to every project we would do. We do engage the community a lot through multiple forms. With respect to Regent Street, right now we're doing a topographical survey just to collect information. Like, we have zero design set up. There isn't anything like that. So I mean, as that project unfolds, there's definitely going to be lots of public engagement. I suppose we could put something out just saying we are doing some surveys along there next year, but like, you know, we're not even really into a high level design yet. to really engage the residents. It's more, we're just looking at collecting topographical information just to see the lay of the land and start to work through what some of those recommendations we can find.
Thank you. If I could ask one more question through, related to this. And the mayor anticipated this question when she was mentioning about the hydro lines on Regent Street. Because we have the ice storm, the derecho, and more of these types of storms will be coming, and knocking out hydro and other services that are on the overhead lines. Is there going to be consideration given to the expensive, I know, but to the option of burying the lines? We go to other places in Peterborough, other neighborhoods, Stewart Drive, for example, in Lakefield, all of these lines are buried and therefore they don't get knocked out in the next ice storm that hits. They're protected. So will there be consideration to the cost benefit analysis of burying these lines on George or Regent?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Really, that's inside my jurisdiction. That would be something that Hydro One would look at. When you're looking at Stewart Drive or some new subdivisions in the subdivision agreement, they might have buried utilities. You don't often see that kind of retroactive on road construction jobs. Specifically Regent Street and that corridor, that might be a little tight. Like I said, there's three-phase hydro and lots of high voltage down there. So often you don't see that kind of hydro buried. Residential, single phase, secondary and primary, you might see buried, but not typically three-phase kind of commercial power. But the Hydro One will definitely be engaged, and if it makes sense for them to look at underground at that time, then that would be, you know, up to them to help incorporate that into the design of the.
Good, thank you. That will enable me to answer the questions that I will inevitably be asked. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to another construction project. This is using our own forces and subcontractors. This is Kinsale. This is out in the Innismore ward. Fairly extensive job that would start at the county and move over towards the dead end in Innismore ward. Just kind of reminds me, and it's an opportunity to remind council, when a road resurfacing job switches from an operational to a construction project. So this approach, and we've used it since amalgamation, if the preparation of the road base and any of the adjacent road works is greater than 50% of the overall cost, then it's deemed to be a capital project, not just routine surface maintenance. So this is definitely one of those types of jobs. It would involve excavation, reshaping, ditching, probably adding a lift or more of a gravel. And then once again, double surface treatment, and that might be something, the double surface would be something that we maybe would wait till 2027, similar to how we did the 16. That would be a fairly big project up on the north end of the Innismore road. And that's all I wanted to talk about for Department 20. I'll move on to Department 22. There's no further questions. So this is another area, as I mentioned, that's a bit of a challenge for us with respect to equipment. And Adams did a great job this year at laying the base down of what we need to do to consider replacement. We actually had two tandems that were down for replacement this year. At my request, Adam reviewed with the staff and was recommending one of those be deferred, so that we would only look at the replacement of one in 2026. The loader is in need of replacement. It's the loader that's actually at the landfill site primarily, but then it's brought off of the landfill site in winter control. And so it's on the list. And the photo there at the bottom just shows a mower. So council may recall that we had a fairly old mower that we sold last year, and we decided that we were going to rent roadside mowing equipment and a tractor. Found that was actually problematic in terms of trying to rent the two at the same time. You can rent one, the other one isn't available that way. So I think renting a tractor will not be an issue, and the crews basically said that they can get that organized with supplier, but then a proper roadside mower is being proposed to be purchased. There's a number of other attachments on the equipment replacement schedule. And I don't know if anybody's ever saw a culvert steamer at work, but we have two of them, but they're super old. And they are a pressurized vessel, which we need to make sure is functioning properly. So the plan is to buy one new steamer to get rid of the second one, and then, like I said, get rid of the third one, second one will stand. And we just go through that cycle. The tandem is one of the pieces of equipment that's included in my report. And it's in the report so that if we make the order sooner, then it's hopeful that we'll be able to replace that in 2027. What we have seen, or what Adam reports from the industry, is that it's switched and that we can get the trucks now sooner, and then it's the body, so the sander body, the plow, all that stuff that takes longer. It was exactly the opposite way around. So if we can move this forward, this would be another one of those purchases through Canoe or the cooperative purchase. And as I mentioned at the very start, I think that the issue of equipment, we owe council report, and with any luck, we'll have that as part of the December meeting. So just in case I haven't beat this to death yet. As I mentioned, the equipment is a challenge for us. The escalating prices, the fact that after COVID, the prices did not come back down. And now the industry generally looks at it when we reach out to them. And they say, well, we know CPI is 1.8, 2%, but the prices are going at 10. So I don't really know what the solution is for that, other than municipalities like ourselves going back saying it's not acceptable. So I guess we won't make that purchase. But that's why we kind of have that ongoing debate about equipment. The second part of this, with respect specifically to Public Works, is our charge out rates. And our charge out rates have been, I think I can only recall maybe one change in the last, definitely in the past decade, but maybe in the last 15 years. So it's kind of got a little away from us, and to the magnitude of maybe if we're charging out something at $31 an hour, it should be $75 now. So that's the magnitude of what I'm talking about. But like I mentioned, Adam's did a great job there in pulling some of the data together and having a really good approach to take a look at it. We've outlined a phased approach in the replacement schedule of 3 years. But I'll be honest, I'm not sure whether we're going to be able to achieve that, and we may have to stretch that over 5 just to look at the big picture of taxation increases. The other key component of that is it's based on the opening number being a bit higher than I think we're going to be able to achieve. So that's the other factor. So we do owe that report back to council. We have went through I would say what we call the major rethink with respect to rentals versus repair and some of those types of things. But maybe as a group, we might be able to kind of kick that around a little bit more, and then we'll have that report that we come back to council in December.
Question, Sir Henry.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Sanas. Just looking through the list, I see that the oldest piece of equipment there is the cat compactor that we're using at the landfill. It says it has a 15-year life expectancy, and we've pushed it 45. Just curious, what's our plan here? Are we hoping it survives the landfill, or just because they carry an expense as well, and it's probably pretty heavily used? I'm assuming it has a lot of hours on it already.
Yeah, so I'll let Alan speak to that, but the one that we do have there is actually a refurbished unit. So it is that age, but we actually bought it from a firm, and it was totally refurbished when we bought it. So it isn't the original one. We do have our original one there, and Adam's looking at that with Derek in terms of replacement. But that has been, we purchased it from a firm that had refurbished it all when we bought it. But Adam probably has some comments, so you'd like to add about that for sure. And the landfill site in general.
Yeah, thanks through you. No, Lane kind of hit the nail on the head there. It is a refurbished unit that we originally bought. We just purchased one 2 years ago from Tomlinson. So it was a retired unit of our prior. So yeah, when you look at the replacement schedule and it says 15 years, that's because it is a used or a refurbished unit. We are looking, really when we come back next year with some more options for the landfill and what we're looking at for long-term solutions there. Will also kind of be reflective in how long we keep that piece of equipment around for. Because a new compactor up there is well over $1 million. You know, this piece of equipment, so. You know, it's been advantageous for us to buy refurbished for used equipment up there. It does get used a lot and it's a requirement, but in the price tag.
Mayor Black.
Thank you, through Mayor. Yeah, it kind of leans on Councillor Henry's question around kind of a matrix is used to determine the life cycle of equipment, because something like the loader at the landfill, I know it's anytime I'm there, it's moving. It's always doing something there. Versus another piece of equipment is more dedicated to winter use or more dedicated to summer use. Is there a different evaluation you look at as far as the life cycle for that equipment based on hours or miles or kilometers, or you know, how do you determine that? It's not, I'm sure it's not one broad brush, it's 10 years for every piece of equipment, right? So maybe you can give us a brief, I know it's probably complicated, but there's a brief overview of how that's managed.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, every piece of equipment's a little different, but we do kind of categorize them a little bit. Plow trucks, you know, heavy equipment, depending on what it's doing, but we do look at a combination of factors. Engine hours are a big one. For the plow trucks, it might be years, but also kilometers on it. Then we started looking at maintenance costs year over year. So part of the rate review, we did look at a 5-year kind of maintenance costs on those items, and as those maintenance costs start to creep up, then that's going to impact your useful life on that asset, right?
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Okay, and just before we leave roads, definitely a general comment about partnering with the county. So Ward Street design is moving ahead at the county level. We had actually contributed to the county project back in 2024 for some initial design work. So there's nothing planned for 2026. Partly that's because through the county initiative, they're looking at a new consultant for roadside amenities, and so we concurred that they go with that consultant because it saved quite a bit of price in terms of where we would go. And we do have good designs already for roadside amenities, so I think that will help us out there as well. There are times where in that project, for instance, the county took the lead. There's times that we take the lead and partner with the county. So we did some CCTV work before on stormwater management. And we had more or less taken the lead. I think at this point in 2026, maybe the county's going to take the lead and we're just going to participate in their tender. It's to get those last few, and I say few, there's actually more than a few, but the last few structures in our network documented properly. Make sure that we know where they are. They're not all in urban centers. Sometimes they're maybe a built-up area of rural, and maybe there's only 4 structures there that tie into the network. But it's just getting a really good handle on that. That's going to feed right into asset management and trying to get an idea, you know, when do we need to have regard for that. And that, once again, that's just partnering not only with the county, but member municipalities as well. So moving on from there, I just commented on no street lighting capital dollars, but that is where the Ward Street project had been funded before. On to structures. So our capital project this year is at the 7th line. So there's a number of large structures that go across there. So this is all to do with proper guide rail placement along that. And it's right by the, if anybody knows that area, it's right by the old urban farm. Through there, there's quite a watershed that goes through. I don't think we'll have as much work involved there as we did on the Fothergill Causeway, but there is a fairly large approach in recess array. So that's on the radar for 2026, and then also a biannual engineering report is due as well. Got a really good base, so hopefully we'll get some good pricing on that.
Question from Deputy Mayor Black.
Thank you, through Mayor. Just going back to the street lighting, I know there's only one item there, but there was a request to have consideration of extending the sidewalk north of the causeway on Ward Street. Is this part of that design as well?
Yeah, that's
It's
correct.
included in there? Just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Okay, on to stormwater, Department 34. That's the CCTV work. That's what I was chatting about before with respect to, our work with the county. Gives you an idea in the slides here just about what we're talking about with asset management. What plans we'll put in place, and then it gives Adam and our design team a really good idea when we're taking a look at a road. Do we need to worry about what's underneath there? Is it in good shape or not? Just another area of improvement for asset management. The other area in stormwater is on George Street. So that's just another component. Adam's outlined there, the extent of work, and I think maybe the section of George down to Hague Street. That we're going through design on that right now, but we may find that that's not both sides. We may actually just have curb and gutter on one side and then open ditch on the other, or a bit of a depression and something where it can roll down to a catch basin, something like that. But that's the only other project in there. And as I mentioned before, that I think that one and some of the others, I just need to verify that I think that could be candidate for OC funding as opposed to an application grant. So council may see that. I'll make sure that I raise that point if it does change and it comes back in December. So that's most of the hard infrastructure.
Question that had to do with the structures. The roof replacement of the pavilion at Isabel Morris Park. Is that a heritage building?
I believe it is, and Andrew or Tanya may be able to respond more to that, but I think they're looking into what can be done there on that structure. But,
Yep, so we've been in communication with Mike and the rec department about what they're proposing to use material for that roof. So that's going to be going to our December meeting where they'll review what the proposed options are and hopefully support the change so we can improve the structure. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, as noted on there in Parks and Rec, that's one of the projects. Additional Wi-Fi at the marina, and working with that we have to work with an outside contractor on some of it. That would be working with our IT folks here and making sure that the coverage is adequate for the guests at the marina. And one of the carryover projects is definitely the parking of the area of the tennis courts and pickleball courts. So those parking lot improvements would help not only that aspect of the Douglas Sports Center, but also benefit the beaches and anybody that comes along there as well. There is a really good base underneath there because that's the old West Park Road. So I don't think excavation will be much of an issue. It's more or less trying to figure out how it's structured and how it's laid out. And you'll see there, I think that's actually last year's fairly what I called rudimentary sketch, but the guys know what they have to do when they get over there. And once again, I'm funding for all of those components in Parks and Rec. Next one is over at the Innismore Waterfront Park in conjunction with the Innismore Optimist Club. There's definitely multiple sources of funding involved in that, and there was just a press release that went out, I think it was this week, and I was just reading that they feel that they, with the support of the Taylor Trillium Foundation, some of the work that Angie and her crew have done, and then obviously the Optimist Club and fundraising efforts that the Optimist Club has put in, they've more or less said that they have the funding in place to move ahead with that program, which is great. I read some of the data that was included in that press release from on Jude's Joy, and yeah, it will be structure that really ours and one other one I think down along the lakeshore is the only one within what you would see driving distance. Hopefully you'll see a lot of activity. No, Mike, if there's anything you want to add on that project, I know you've been involved with the Optimist Club there and as well.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, we've met on site with they have a lot of community support, as I'm sure you're all aware. A lot of in-kind and whatnot. So we've met with the general who would do the site prep. And the only half loads will be about the only thing that'll cause a little bit of a delay. They won't be able to get started in April like they hope, just because there is too much soil to take out of there and do it efficiently as a in-kind until half loads are off. So once that starts, it will go very quickly. The prep work is like most jobs, is the most important part. And then the other sometime later in the spring and early summer, we'll have a very exciting opening.
Okay, and we'll move over to, sorry. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, just before we move on, thank you for that. I want to go back to Douglas Park. And I think it's great that we're doing that parking. I know we talked about it last year, and it's very necessary to get a lot of those cars off the road when people are playing pickleball, because pickleball is incredibly popular. I know it's going to be used by other people as well, but that'll be a very welcome addition, that parking area. The question that I have through you, Mayor, is that the pickleball group is helping to organize leads and organizing over 700 players. And some of the things they also talked about besides the parking was the installation of permanent nets and the painting of pickleball lines on the tennis courts, so that when there is no one using the tennis courts, other pickleball players can use that too, rather than waiting for other games to end. Is there thought to meeting the requests of that pickleball group for the permanent nets or the painting of pickleball lines on those tennis courts, either with this capital budget or in the operational budget that we're going to be talking about later?
Sure. Through you, Madam Mayor. Certainly those are items that were discussed as being things that for the future. In 2026, I did not have them in my capital. Certainly to have a look, get idea of costs, get idea of those sorts of things, especially given that one of the things that the pickleball group said over and over is 2025 is going to be the crazy year. If we're ever going to have overloaded courts and so much use, it'll be when the 16 courts aren't available in Peterborough. So I think it'd be very wise in 2026 to sort of see if those to get pricing, to see what the cost would be, because frankly, painting pickleball lines on the tennis, right now there's a dedicated tennis size, would not be an overly expensive item. But again, if it's in this year, they didn't have that many days where they were so loaded that they were turning people away. And that's in the year when we should, by rights, have had 2-3 times the number of people, because as we all know, Bonneworth was 100% out of play. So I think it'd be best to, and that's one of the reasons why the carryover was the only item that was going to be in 2026 for sure. And then look at the other parts, see what our volume is like, because I really think we're going to see a trend of it still being very popular, obviously, but not being overused to the degree that they really thought it was going to be crazy there. And it was good and busy and being used well, which is what we want for every indoor and outdoor facility we have. But the numbers, I think even for them, were a little surprising. So those are potentially good projects, but they weren't planned for 2026. The parking lot was the only one that was going to be, because it supports obviously the court use, but also the beach and campground and marshland.
Right. Thank you. Through Mayor. Yeah. And then that's why I'm totally supportive of that parking area being implemented too. So great. So what I've heard is we're not saying no to these ideas. We're saying, let's see what 2026 looks like, to see if it is worth spending the money on, and we'll figure out how much it's going to cost. Okay. Thank you.
Through you, Mike, can you remind me, when they redid Ennismore's, it was a provincial grant. Was that like a one-time thing the province was doing, doling out money, or is that something we can apply to once we know funding, like numbers for painting the lines? Like when we resurfaced the Ennismore tennis courts, we got the pickleball.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, well, when the courts were redone, they were redone in Lakefield and in Ennismore all at the same time. So they were all taken down to the base. That was an OTF, Ontario Trilling Foundation. So it would have been one-time capital for that. So we got, you know, $478,000 to do that. Council at the time chose to put another 66 in order to make sure that there was a basketball court at Lakefield so that they both look the same. OTF could not be used for anything new. It was a senior-based refurbishment opportunity. So it had to be existing infrastructure that they were gonna supporting. And as I said, we got almost $500,000 to be able to do those, the two facilities. But at the time, we put, so you, and both look exactly the same in that you've got a tennis court, which could be used, you know, there's lots of great tape, there's lots of temporary paint that you can put down if you were having a tournament and wanted to have 8 courts. We only own 4 portable nets for each location. And then the second side still has a tennis court on it, but with 4 pickleball courts painted, 2 per side, and a net dividing it, which most of the players love to have because you've got less balls rolling around at your feet and whatnot. So the tennis net stays up even though it's one side in both facilities is used 90% of the time as pickleball, whereas the other side, when it's being used for tennis, is available at any time. The request, which was from the Lakefield pickleball, was the potential for putting posts in so they just don't have to set up the portable nets all the time. That, and then the second one was to paint lines on the other side so that pickleball would be possible where they would have to set up the portable nets. So that's kind of, just in case there's any confusion from people, that was what the request was. And it was, as Councilor Boyko summarized, it was definitely agreed that, yeah, these things are possibilities, but I don't think they're a do it right now idea, is because we really don't know what the numbers are going to look like. Pickleball is doing very well, but we have no idea what the Peterborough effect will be when they've got their 16 courts up and running.
Thank you. Yeah, I couldn't remember what kind of grant it was. I just remember it was a big deal when we announced it, and I don't know, I haven't looked either what the updated opportunities are too. So I know that could shift in the coming years. Thank you.
Okay, move on to library services. We'll just comment that Sarah had some commitments today, but she is able to join us, and I think she's been monitoring through Zoom. So she is available if there's any questions you'd like to can answer. In the library service, we're continuing to make investments in technology and programming. All of those this year are being funded through reserve. There's potential in one of them, I think, to take a look at some fundraising dollars, but at this point, it's all funded by reserve dollar. A significant point there would be that in technology and programming, we're actually moving away from outside contractor and partnering now with the township IT department. So we've got a couple of folks upstairs that are going to support that at the library. And so I know Jonathan, our head of IT, has been chatting with Sarah. There's a couple of things there. One would be in terms of network support. The other would be backup of the existing system. The collection system itself is already a cloud-based system, so that's taken care of. It's more to do with the documentation locally. And the other would be just ongoing support. We work through that exercise. So working with Jonathan and Dustin upstairs, I think the library will be very well served. The other aspect of that is that the amount that we would have paid an outside contractor will now be an intra-fund transfer over to town government. So it's the same level of funding, and so there's some support there for the IT folks. And I guess the other part of that is Windows 11. There's a number of units that we've been able to really extend the useful life of in the library. but we do need to upgrade some of those units, not to Windows 11. I think that we are also having had the units in a number of branches for a number of years. There's a lot of folks that bring their own device into the facility. So we'll take a look, Bridgenorth would be a good example. If there's 6 or 8 within that public space, we may reduce that to 4, and then it'll be Windows 11 compliant. The other point on the slide.
Question.
Sorry, yeah. Okay, sure. The other point is there is some space improvements that in this morning that were put in place, and so that's we're pleased with those. Fundraising efforts continue, but this year we are putting a pause on the golf tournament. So the golf tournament ran successfully for 2 years. The thought was election year, first of all, but they are planning on some type of an event in 2027. There's Sarah had provided a couple of options to the ad hoc committee at the meeting, and that'll be discussed again when it gets to the board level. So maybe not as much of a public facing fundraising event, but there will be some fundraising that will be taking place in 2026.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. A couple of questions. With respect to purchasing software, having charitable status, do they get the reduced rate for software?
Yeah.
And do we get it? Because we have charitable status as well.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, through TechSoup, they were able to get it because of the fact that they have a charity registration number. It's a little bit more problematic for us as a government. Right? So I know that our IT staff maximize everything that they can, but I think in that instance, licensing comes in.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. It's a follow-up question. There's a number of items obviously needed, but under $500. What's our typical capital asset depreciation policy there?
Sure. So thank you, you, Madam Mayor. That's a topic that came up for discussion when we talked about this back in October. We haven't looked at the procurement policy in libraries since it was originally put in place. And Janice has taken over some of the heavy slugging this year with respect to our purchasing file. And then once that's in place, we would take a look at the library. I would anticipate that those levels are going to increase. It's all in relation to the budget levels. So at the time when they were put in place, I think they were relevant, but yeah, they should be increased for sure.
Yes.
I would expect they would be before next year's budget.
More work in posting than the value yeah. Okay. Well, thank you.
Councillor Boyd.
Thank you. I have a question about the, through you, Mayor Senes, about the golf tournament. My golf skills are questionable, so I probably do the golf tournament a favor by not playing it, but it's because the Lakeville Literary Festival is on the same weekend. But my understanding is that it not only makes money for the library, but it also puts the library out there in the public realm, and people talk about the library and the importance of library, our 3 libraries. So my question is, why would the fact that it is an election year have anything to do with doing the golf tournament?
Sure. Through you, Madam Mayor. So a number of things there. A lot of the organizing effort is definitely staff-based, and we have a volunteer committee. So it isn't the organizing. It's the actual prizes that go along with it. It's the silent auction component, and it's the asking and actually reaching out to the individuals for full sponsors and things like that. And a lot of that heavy slugging is done by our council representatives. So in an election year, we didn't think it would be appropriate for the council reps to be going to some of these commercial establishments and asking for donations. And having that ongoing dialogue up and throughout an election. That was one aspect of it. The other is that generally, I think the committee has talked it out and felt there should be a bit of a pause and a bit of a refresh, and it's been the second year running. Last year, or I should say this year in particular, there's been a lot of golf tournaments. And so the thought is, well, let's maybe change focus. It's an election year, maybe look at a run-a-thon, a walkathon, something like that, still gets the library out there, but maybe doesn't have as much in terms of the asks of individuals.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and so just a little note there, that so the board did review the capital and approve it as a board in October, so we'll bring that forward. We have at the ad hoc operations meeting already in the library, that will be going to the board meeting next week. And then we should be in good shape to bring everything together at the end of December. Been mentioned many times, it wouldn't be a finance meeting without a pie chart, so here it is.
Yeah.
This is a bit of a visual on where we're spending money this year. So obviously facilities, roads, and our roads fleet is a big section. The majority of our expenditures there. Fire is normally a lot more prominent, but as I mentioned this year, we just haven't got that fully finalized with respect to the piece of equipment at this point. This is more equipment general. Yeah, and a little over $5 million worth of investment. A general comment about studies. I did mention that we have the zoning bylaw review for this year. He's got a couple of placeholders, one for just land in terms of if it was an appraisal or a survey or something like that. And then we have a placeholder for asset management reports if we need outside consultants for that as well. And that could be data gathering or rewrites of levels of service or different things like that. There will be another update to our asset management plan required by July the 1st. And depending on how the first quarter this year's goes, we may add a few components as well before that, but we'll definitely have one before July 1st deadline. So those were the expenditures. I just have a few slides where I wanted to go through, talk a little bit about some funding that would be coming in, and then just a bit about our pending grants. So our provincial grant details this year for we saw an increase of almost $100,000 for 93.5. So that was a welcome increase from the province for sure. That is the only provincial unconditional grant that the township receives. The library does receive the public library operating grant as well, which is unconditional. So because of that, it's available for a variety of expenses. We've always tried to use it in the capital way for one-time expenses or time-limited contributions, like with respect to the equipment replacements program. Special projects or capital funding that once we make that investment, it's going to be in place for a number of years. And then the other would be if we just don't have sufficient reserves, then we may look at that, or maybe our share of the grant or something like that. OCF is a grant, it's more conditional. It's based on, or I should say, the asset management plan drives investments, and it's often used to fund infrastructure investments if our reserves are insufficient, or just with respect to say structures or stormwater where we're starting to build those reserves. So that's at the provincial level, and at the federal level, the Canada Community Building Fund, which I think I just read an AMO release today that they're looking at renaming it again. So it used to be the AMO gas tax funding, and now it's this, and then it's going to be something else. But there's what I did read in that, which was particularly important to me, is no new money. So, so we do know that there's no change for this year. We typically hold that level for 2 years, and then they go through the number of people in Canada. We take a look at the provinces. So it's like a stats can number. So like the census, thank you. So it's census based. So it's kind of static for 2 years, and then we'll pick it up census. So we did see a decrease 1 year only because BC, I think, through Northern Ontario, but most of the time it was up. But it is static in 2026, a little over $610,000. I did mention that pending grants could impact our budget a bit. Oh, another question from council.
Got a question here from Councillor Karen. Jesus. I'm just gonna have a contract out on me by the end of the year. Henry.
trying to keep my smart ass mouth shut right now. All right, so with the gas tax credit that has changed its identity now, we did have discussions before that, that money would go possibly towards the link. I'm not sure if I'm confused, or we're gonna keep this allocated
No,
here,
I
so
can
it
let,
wouldn't be
I
about.
can let Angie speak to that, but it's a different form of gas tax, Mike, but Angie, you should maybe speak to that.
Get into it.
Right. Yeah, so it isn't this gas tax money, there's another pocket of money which would then support transit.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, and the last one are just grants, where the decision is outstanding or they're pending. So we had the Golden Years, building, so they rent that older facility from us. They need to take care of some HVAC issues up there, so we were approached to ask, to put in a grant on their behalf. And if we're successful, then that would go a long way towards replacing one of the HVAC units, up there. Fire department, of course, Florida mentioned that we have another PPE, testing and cleaning grant, which is out there. So I think that is, while it's pending, I think we're very good chance it's going to be successful. Very similar to the last one. A couple of different tree planting grants through Trees Canada. And then we have an application into rural development, for the Lakefield Boardwalk, and that's specific to the wooden section, the Lakefield Boardwalk. These are not currently in the capital budget. Although they're on the horizon, and it's obvious that Megan and Angie do all the heavy slugging on that, so I appreciate the work there. Thank you. I've got my crew here that's keeping me on side. So with respect to Department 45, I don't have a slide for that. But Department 45 is the Parks Equipment Department. And so the ice resurfacer is the large component there. That's fairly significant purchase at the arena. And I don't know how I could miss that, but yeah, it is down
That's right.
for replacement, and we do have money in the reserve to offset the fund for that. So that now completes the part of my presentation on the taxation budget and anything to do with capital. The management team's here and available for any other questions, Council.
Are there any questions? Councillor Boyd?
Thank you, through you, Marcinus. Something that you and I discussed briefly, Lane, is the manner in which the grants may change if our population goes over 20,000. And our population is 19 and change now, so we're inching toward that 20,000. Is there anything you can tell us about how the grants will change, whether we'll be in a better position for if we make it over the 20,000, probably in the next census, whether the census data is 20,000 permanent residents, the seasonal, is it called taxpayer? Like, how exactly is the 20,000 determined? And what effect will it be when we inevitably burst over the 20,000 limit?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, I don't have really good information on that, but it is something that I can take a look at. I just know that there are thresholds, and 20 is definitely a major threshold, and I think there is another one, but it's a lot more than we would get to. I think it's, from what I understand, it's more to do with eligibility for conditional grants. So there would just be a certain point where if we're over 20, then there would just be a component of grants we're no longer eligible to apply for. The province just recently released a grant with respect to road repairs. Quite interested in that, but it was rural roads, and it was, I think, less than 5,000. So it was where, it was something with the pothole repair program. Okay, well, hey, we'll make use of that, but that threshold was low. So I do know that 20,000 is just a general rule of thumb when it comes to a number of grants. So I have a feeling that there'll be a number of conditional grants we would just no longer be eligible for.
But at the same point, there might be others that we will be eligible for.
I don't know. I can't say that. That would
Okay.
Yeah, I don't really think that would be the case. Yeah, it's a little bit of a need.
Yeah, it should.
Yeah, I think that is the way to say it. The middle-sized municipalities sometimes just. So.
Yeah.
So Councillor
I-
Boyko, rather than being a big fish in a little pond, which we are now, we will be a small fish in a big pond.
But I can take a look at that and see of the traditional grants that we would look at, what ones we have been successful at applying for. Are there some of those that we just wouldn't be able to apply for?
Yeah, that would be interesting to know going forward because we will hit that 20,000 in the next, decade, say.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
what is the trigger? Is it census? Is it the last census? Census comes. out
That's what I
every
mean. Seasonal permanent. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So and to be honest, I'll probably use the royal leader because they'll probably be Megan will do it well, but I can get something.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, we have a recommendation before us with regards to the draft capital budget. I'm not going to read it all. It's quite long. Do I have someone who is willing to move that? Councillor Henry, seconded by Councillor Koulis, all in favor? It's carried. Thank you very much. Let's take a 5-minute break before we go to the water and sewer. Right. Now move on with the, like the sewer and water, Lane.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, and then once again, just thanks to the council for holding a special meeting today. As mentioned earlier in the meeting, we're going to move ahead and consider sewer and water capital at this time as well, but for the most part, it is being funded through the Lakefield Water and Sewer Reserve or through specific ISIP funding to the grant program. The presentation here is also in the same order as the link was sent through to council. And we do have a separate summary sheet, and it's outlined in the same way. And as I mentioned, as we go through the presentation, I'll be adding some additional comments and pausing as we go, but for the most part, we've got Adam here to answer any of those additional operational questions as we look through. My clicker's just frozen a bit. It's gonna go to the next slide that comes up. Yeah, here we go. As part of a budget cycle for 2026. So it's a little bit different at the end of this for water and sewer. But it starts out very similar. Adam's worked with Janice and I to put together a draft capital projects. We have today's capital presentation, and then there will be impacts on the work plans, and there will be some impacts we'll talk about in December. In January, we'll deal internally with our department managers to have that preliminary look at 2025 and to see if there are any surprises, any projects that need to carry over. And with respect to that on capital, sometimes council will recall the project maybe if it didn't quite finish up or something that's going to go into Q1. I may have to amend the schedule a bit. I think that we'll be distributing water and sewer budget materials in and around February the 20th. Considering that presentation at the regular council meeting on the 24th, and then going through our PSAB adoption on March the 10th. So I think that's about a whole quarter ahead of schedule. We may be able to bring it forward a little bit more next year, but at the same time, it has that separation we talked about earlier. So it's very clear to the ratepayers, anybody that watches, that we're doing a taxation-based budget and then we're dealing with water and sewer budget. So as I mentioned, the summary sheet's a nice one pager of the capital program for 2026, which is the water and sewer in Lakefield, just a little over $3.6 million. And the funding there is through the applicable reserve and or part of the ISIP program. So first of all, we'll deal with sewer. That's an actual shot from our sewage lagoon. So I know it want to include some actual shots as we go through. We'll take a look at the Water Street pumping station, and that's our main pumping station along water. They're over $120,000. Next investment would be up at the Lakefield College School with respect to remote communications, and that's all of our communications basically come back to the main water plant. And so it's a central hub for our operators to be able to take care of operations and monitor operations. And this will be adding another tab so that they can take a look at the college school thing. While some of these capital investments would be paid for through the rates that the college school would pay us, if there are specific expenses due to the sewage pumping station going down, or the fact that we had to call on an outside contractor to come in and repass those expenses around, and they mark up that we pass them around, college school takes care of it. Also a bit of you'd say capital maintenance, because it's anticipated it's going to be over $14,000. But lagoon vegetation removal, and so that's along the outskirts of both of the cells that we have up there. Just figure out how exactly we're going to do that on an annual basis. The lagoon experiences a lot of growth along the side, and with growth and decay and things like that, we just want to make sure that we have an adequate footprint for the process to continue and for the treatment process to to go through its cycle. Back to George Street again. So as I mentioned, it's primarily a sewer project, but water's included as well. That's the extent of what you're talking about. So Adam pulled together a good map for us here to show what we're dealing with. Talking to some of the councilors just about the depth of the sewer. So you can imagine topographically, you're maybe looking going down Clemente Street and George tends to pull off on either side. But when you think about the sewer and gravity feed, it's basically needs to gravity feed to George Street, which is the pumping station. And I was going to ask Adam beforehand, but the depth at Clemente Street would be approximately
20 feet.
20 feet. So when we go through, imagine going through that intersection, despite the fact that the contractor would probably have trench boxes and different things like that, there's going to be a section back on George where the entire road's going. You need to it needs to be done properly and safely, but 20 feet to 20 feet deep. And in comparison, I don't know if any of the folks are along Fraser or Smith. Was it as deep there at that point?
Do you mind, Mary? Yeah, it would have been pretty close. It was 18 to 20 for sure. Yeah, but in a tighter area because of the housing, that duplex that was on Fraser and Smith, the slope of the trench, they couldn't go back any further because the house was right there by the road edge.
So if anybody happened to go by to see the construction, it's at least that deep. Or deeper when we go through. So just to keep in mind, topography versus gravity feed, it's totally different, you know. And then I don't have a slide there, just before Angie points out that I don't have a slide for it, but the trenchless sewer repairs, we always try to include about $25,000 in our budget for trenchless sewer repairs. So we happen to see a section, Adam identifies it, so it would be with Anita now, and then work through that with a contractor to put in a trenchless repair. It's essentially you're putting in a liner without actually excavating. But over to water and the capital projects there. We've been chatting about for some time the idea of future planning for water. And so a master plan is on the books for this year. That'd be funded through reserves, and it's basically to take a look at where does the water department go. We have fairly good detailed information on Lakefield South, but then how do we actually develop? And we have to put in place water financial plans for 7 years. 7 years, I think. And then, and then this would also build into what type of capital investments do we need to make. I've heard the councilor's comment before from Lakefield about, the rates and those type of things, so we would be able to take a look at those things as well and get that out there. Anita has, I should say Alex, before did a lot of work. Adam actually had pointed out that he did update some of the rate comparisons. We did. So we still, when you look at comparable utilities, I think that's the key point is comparable ones. You want to look at municipalities and user bases. So if you looked at us and we're 17,000, 18,000, really you need to look at Lakefield, which is 3,000. Those rates in comparison to other municipalities, which is slightly below the average. If you compare yourself, or if you come from the GTA and you're used to Waterloo region or Mississauga or something like that, it could be a shock when you come here. But I've always said the ratepayers over the years is it's like anything else, and do your homework before you move in. Take a look at it, and it's all economies of scale. Stuff but the master plan will help us and set us up in that.
Excuse me, Lane, we always get questions from people with regards to having the water metered.
Yeah, so water metering is, it is a question that I've heard, and I'm sure Adam has heard over the years as well. I guess the best way that I've explained it to individuals is that our system is relatively small and our fixed cost component is relatively high. So if you look at the plants that we have, what the operators need to do on a daily basis, the reserves that we need to put aside for future capital investments, that at one point, and I don't have the exact number, but was at least 70%, maybe higher than that, of the budget. Things like hydro, chemical usage, some of those things are those, things that are impacted by use. So it's relatively small. So we could make an investment which would be well in excess of $1 million in terms of putting meters everywhere, that we would then need to maintain and ensure that they're accurate and replace in its useful life. We could do that, but at the same time, the base rate is going to be relatively high. So it's going to be fairly similar, I think. So it isn't like you're going to make that investment and you're going to see the rates dramatically. Yeah. And Adam would be good to weigh in if there's anything I missed, but
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. No, I think that's good, Lane. One comparison I make too, when people do ask me, is comparing it to hydro, right? You've got your delivery charge, which is your fixed charge on your hydro bill, which is a good percentage of your bill. Doesn't matter how much you use consumption wise. You know, you can reduce your consumption all you want, but you're still gonna pay that fixed portion of your hydro bill. People have just, you know, they're now accustomed to that delivery charge. Water wouldn't be any different. Once you get into a metered system, doesn't matter how much water you use, we still have to produce the water. We still have to maintain the pipes in the ground. We still have to maintain your water service. Even if your service is off, we're still maintaining everything up to property line. So that portion of that cost is substantial.
Deputy Mayor Black.
Yeah, just to follow up on that comment, I've talked to a number of people about this subject, and there's significant buyer's remorse out there for communities that have gone to that system because the equipment doesn't last that long. It's constantly being replaced. So yeah, I think all of the arguments that have been brought forward today are significant and real. There is a lot of buyer's remorse out there for municipalities that have gone to that. It's a lot of work.
over to the water treatment plant. This is one of our ISIP grant programs, and so some of the upgrades there, there's quite a laundry list of items. It's included on the capital sheet, but it's a little over $700,000 in 2026. Now that is funded partly by the feds in the province. So I think it's maybe 40% by the feds, 33% by the province, and the remainder by the municipality. And we pull that number out of reserves. So that's, I think we're in year 3, maybe, the ISIP program. We made some planned investments. We had, there's a large component of Strickland Street and some of the repairs that went up through to the standpipe. We've got water treatment plant upgrades, and then we're going to see coming up a little bit about another section that's going to be updated as well. We have what I've just called various water treatment plant upgrades. So we're looking at high lift pumps, preparation with a Y-trap install. It's to do with some drainage in one particular area, and caustic system upgrades as well. And the caustic system, that I understand correctly, that's so that we add something so that our water that goes out is not too aggressive, basically. Back inside of our pipes. And it brings the you talk about it.
Through your Madam Mayor. No, it is, yeah. It's our corrosion control program. So during the water treatment process, we lower the pH to get better coagulation and get the material to precipitate out. We don't want to put a water in the system that's got a lower pH and corrosive, so we add caustic soda, which increases the pH. So we increase the pH up to about 7.3, 7.4, and that helps mitigate any corrosion on the pipes.
Couldn't have said that better myself. Thanks, Adam. Yeah. Next item is I'm terming it a bit of a pilot for part of the program, but it is at the water plant with respect to work orders and asset management. So the system that we're looking at is a very similar system component to what the county uses and a number of other municipal partners use as well. That would allow Adam and his crew there to actually put in place a work order system, properly document, and then there would be an add-on component, not the full module, but an add-on component for asset management as well. And we're looking at that as being a really good jumping off point for asset management and the data collection out in the field. The operators there, supervisor there is very committed to the project, and they can see the value in it. So I think we'll really be able to showcase what the automated system can do. Right now, our majority of our asset management plan is on Excel. Provides us with a great level of flexibility. It provides us with the ability to add and take away components if we don't find that they're useful. But this is a kind of a tried and true work order system, and I think the asset management component would be, I'm not sure, Adam, we haven't chatted about it very much. If you want to add anything to that, if that's good. Next one, which is also ISIP funded, is at the Standpipe on Strickland Street. So we are putting that back in service. We've had a number of different engineers take a look at it over the years to figure out what we have to do. It's part of that ISIP program. Council will see a report coming to the next regular council meeting where we're wanting to move ahead with a bit of a component of that this year. And Adam's looking to the ISIP folks to see if we can incorporate that into that program as well. It's to put a meter chamber right at the property for the standpipe so that we can properly monitor the amount of water that's going to and coming out of the standpipe. The way that we operate the system with the standpipe and the elevated tank in tandem, and then we have a large clear well at the water treatment plant as well. The operators, I would say it puts a challenge to them to take all those components into account when they're doing their work. It isn't like you can just concentrate on one elevation and say, okay, we're filling the elevated tank. You have to have regard for the standpipe that comes back online. You had to have regard for when you did your backwash and if the clear well is full. And those always different. The amount of work that the gang does down there in terms of keeping all those things rolling is really amazing, and it's a testament to the amount of hours that they put into training and how they do that. So I think that the other part of bringing the standpipe back online will support fire protection. So if we have a large event in the city or in the village, which of course we did have, and it also allows for times when we need that water. And we saw a positive response from the community when we put the lawn watering ban in, but it's just one more ability to have that amount of water that's there at our disposal essentially. But as I mentioned, because it's a standpipe and then we have an elevated tank on the other side, it's kind of two different operations that you're running in parallel. So yeah, kudos to the guys that are running, and well, I should say the guys and girls that need it. Well,
Oh, yes. Councillor Boyd.
Yeah, through you, Mercedes. I've asked this question before. I know that the standpipe has been offline for a number of years. When it comes back online, I guess, when do we predict it'll be back online? And Lane has mentioned the fire. Will people in that area of the village notice a difference in pressure or any other difference when this comes back online?
Through you, Madam Mayor. As part of this project, it'll be back online next year. That's the whole rehabilitation. Really, over the last number of years, we've been working towards bringing it back online. Back in 2017 or 18, we did a bunch of cement mortar lining, a bunch of water main up on Ralston and Ermatinger because the standpipe was out of service. We would have a team in there in service to do that one. We did Strickland Street ahead of it coming back into service. Trying to do as much work as we can in that area before we bring it back online. This is kind of the finale of this project, is to bring it back online. So that'll happen next year. In answer to your question, residents in that area really won't see a difference. Like the whole system operates on high pressure. So the height of the elevated tank, whatever the water level is in the elevated tank, our plant will start and stop based on that requirement. So the standpipe and the elevated tank kind of work in tandem. So the levels would actually be the same. Depending on the demand in the system, they might differ by a foot, but you're still generating the same high pressure. So the water pressure in the system will change. The available capacity will increase. So for firefighting events, we will have more available water in the system to use for those kinds of things. But in that, it also creates a bit of a learning curve, because now as an operator, we have twice as much water in the system that we need to make sure it doesn't go stagnant to reduce the residency time and make sure we get lots of turnover. So it's going to be, a bit of a change in our thinking of how the water plant and how to operate the system with that much more water in. It's been offline for 10 years now. So shortly after the elevated tank was commissioned, like when I operated it here, we only had it in service for about 2 years. Then we had some contamination that took it off. So we really don't have a lot of experience with working with that water in the system. So
Okay, and to close out water, then we're back to George Street again on the water upgrades there. And once again, that's about a $600,000 project. So I might have talked about it before, but I think overall the George Street project's at 1.8 million. And it will definitely set the village up for expansion into the future. Multiple funding sources, and it would be a good project to have completed for sure. So that completes the PowerPoint presentation and overview of Lakeville Water and Sewer. Is it Adam's here? Anything operational? The report basically just ask for receipt for information and then incorporate that into the draft budget document. That will be coming in, as I mentioned, later in Q1 of 2026.
Any questions? So I need someone to make the motion to receive the information and incorporate into the draft budget document. Moved by Deputy Mayor Black, seconded by Councilor Boyko, all in favor. That's carried. Is there any other new and unfinished business? I see none. I'm looking for someone to move the confirming bylaw. Councilor Boyko, Councilor Coolus, all in favor. Carried and adjournment. Councilor Deputy Mayor Black, all in favor. Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, staff. Yep.